Good morning and welcome everyone to this remote meeting of Lewes District Council's Licensing Committee. I am Councillor Sean McLeod and I'm chair of this committee. The meeting is being held remotely in accordance with the government regulations. For those watching on a live stream, please bear with us if we have any difficult technical difficulties. I will now take items 1 and 2 together. Apologies for absence, introductions and declarations of interest. I would like to invite councillors to introduce themselves by confirming your name and also advising if you need to declare an interest on any item on the agenda. Before I do so, I can confirm I have had apologies from Councillor Kira Rigdon and Councillor Sam Ajaniji. I also have no interest to declare on any items on this agenda. I'm now going to begin the roll call. Councillor Borman.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, Councillor Liz Borman, and I have no declarations of interest to declare on this agenda. Thank you.
Councillor Clay, if he's in.
Good morning, Sean. Councillor Clay, no interest to declare on this agenda.
Councillor Denny.
Councillor Johnny Denis, no interest to declare.
Councillor Gauntlet.
Good morning, Councillor Stephen Gauntlet. I have no interest to declare on this agenda. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Lington.
Councillor Isabel Millington, and I have no interest to declare. Thank you.
Councillor Lord.
Good morning, Chair. Councillor Jim Lloyd. I have no declaration interest on any item on this agenda. Thank you.
And Councillor Robinson.
Good morning, Chair. Councillor Christine Robinson. I have no interest to declare on any items on the agenda. Thank you, Chair.
I will ask officers presenting reports or providing advice to members to introduce themselves before speaking later in the meeting. Please can I ask everyone mutes their microphones when they are not speaking, and if they have any connectivity issues, you may find it helpful to turn off your cameras. If anyone wishes to speak, please use the hand icon in Teams to indicate that to me. Finally, members, please can you turn off your mobile phones if you have not already done so. Agenda item 3, minutes. Councillors, do you wish me to sign the minutes of the last meeting on the 17th of December as a correct record? I would assume they are agreed unless anyone wishes to speak against them now. Cool. They're agreed. Agenda item 4, urgent items. There are no urgent items. Agenda item 5, written questions. None have been received. Agenda item 6, taxi licence guide and review. I would like to invite Paul Fulton, Specialist Advisor for Licensing, to present his report.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee and everybody present at this meeting. My name is Paul Thornton, a Specialist Advisor for Licensing for Lewes District Council. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, the purpose of this morning's meeting is to report the findings of the consultation that recently took place on the proposed Lewes District Council Hackney Carriage and Private Hire Licensing Guidance, and to agree a final guidance document to be adopted on a date agreed. So the recommendations are that you consider the consultation responses received, that you consider if changes are going to be made, and if you do consider that changes should be made, that you delegate the senior specialist advisor to take necessary steps to implement any changes, produce a final guidance and publish on the date to be agreed with the chair of this committee. Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, you'll be aware that the last meeting of this committee on the 17th of December 2020 considered a number of proposed changes to your taxi guidance. These were brought about as a result of Department for Transport guidance issued in the summer of 2020, and you'll also be aware that the licensing team took the opportunity to review the policy, so the guidance as it was, and in light of the DFT document, and we took the opportunity to update and reword a number of sections, and also took into account a number of recommendations that came about from the DFT guidance. The standards document issued by the DFT recommended measures to be put into place and administered appropriately to mitigate the risk posed to the public. Now, by implication, this standards document is being considered by all local authorities in England and Wales. So it's not just specific to Lewis District Council. It sets out very clearly that licensing authorities must have regard to the standards when exercising their functions. And they qualify having regard as being more than a cursory glance at the document before arriving at a preconceived conclusion. It also states that given the standards have been set directly to address the safeguarding of the public and the potential impact of failings in this area, the importance of thoroughly considering the standards cannot be overstated. It does qualify that by saying that whilst licensing authorities must reach their own decisions, the standards may be drawn upon in any legal challenge in the future to an authority's practice, and any failure to adhere to the standards without sufficient justification could be detrimental to an authority's defence. It also tells us that the DFT will monitor the effectiveness of the standards in achieving the protection of children and vulnerable persons. And I can confirm that the Council has been recently contacted by the DFT asking us what is taking place, and we have informed them about the committee meeting on the 17th of December, the public consultation, and today's meeting. They obviously have been conducting this consultation exercise and communication exercise with all local authorities accordingly. I don't intend to go through the 32 matters that are in section 3, Mr. Chairman. The changes considered during the public consultation, unless you particularly want me to. But you will see that in a separate report on the 17th of December, proposals were also put forward regarding the wheelchair accessible vehicles for Lewis District Council. And this was added on to the public consultation for the DFT standards. The consultation took place from the 25th of January this year for a period of 6 weeks. Amongst other things, press release was issued, a number of bodies were contacted, and information was placed on the Lewis District Council website, and an online survey was placed on the council website. I'll come back to that very shortly. Comments received from a number of people, including businesses, existing licence holders, and members of the public. Now, as I previously mentioned, 32 changes were authorised by yourselves for public consultation. And what happened after your after your meeting on the 17th of December was that six of the probably the most prominent items from that list of 32 were identified for specific questions in the online survey. And they were, in no particular order, the question regarding wheelchair accessible vehicles, CCTV, penalty points, the conviction policy, the safeguarding and disability awareness training, and the English language proficiency test. I'll turn briefly to the key findings, and again, I do not intend to read out the key findings, and they may be subject of some questions later on. Now, I think some of the headlines from it, in total, there were 357 responses, and they covered 155 residents, 170 licensed drivers, 19 operators, and there were 13 other people, including commuters, 1 or 2 businesses, and a couple of residents from Brighton. Mr. Chairman, I don't intend to, as I say, go through the, unless you particularly want me to, the every single response. I have no doubt you and your committee have read the responses. I think at this stage it may be more appropriate and probably more informative for me to take any questions regarding the consultation findings. Mr. Chairman, that's my report for the time being.
Thank you, Mr. Thornton. I now invite members to discuss the item. Can they please use their hand icon on Teams to indicate if you wish to speak? No hand? Oh, Councillor Liddington. Sorry, Councillor Liddington, you're muted. Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's right. Just takes a little while to do it. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I've got quite a lot to say, so I'm not quite sure. This is going to be a bit rambling, probably. First of all, 2 quick questions. The first one was on the wheelchair vehicles. I assume then that we're not making that, that all new vehicles have to be wheelchair. From the responses and from the guidance, I understand that we're just leaving it as it is. So that's just one question for clarification. The second one is the CCTV, which, as some of you know, has been one of my main issues. I'm on record as always being against having CCTV in taxis. And I'm just wondering why, it's still in the guidance when the public consultation there, although it's close, there is a slight majority for not having it. So I just wondered whether maybe officers could explain why we're still having that imposed when there isn't a majority in favour. If there's a majority not wanting it, why are we still having it? Then there are a few issues going through. It's just really to do with what's in the guidance. If we look at number D is insurance write-offs, I couldn't actually find that in the guidance. I'm not sure where it is. It didn't seem to be in part 3. I couldn't find it. CCTV wheelchair return. The fit and proper test, which is under K. I see that's been altered and that's fine. But the old definition is still in Appendix 6, so that will need to be changed because we've got different ones in the guidance and the appendix. The other thing is the safeguarding awareness training. Again, that's fine. I think that should be there, but it's not actually in the guidance. Under the heading safeguarding training, it's all about the disability and something else. There's 2 things in there, but it doesn't actually say about having safeguarding training. So I think that needs to be amended. I think that's about it for now. So yes, if I could just have my 2 questions answered and if those points could be covered as well. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, it's Paul Thornton, Specialist Advisor Licensing here. Councillor, your 2 points about the wheelchair accessible vehicles and the CCTV and the responses from the survey. Now, the whole point of this was to provide consultation with the public and wider businesses for their views, and that's what the consultation document has shown. What decision you make today will, in effect, it's your committee's decision whether or what you implement, but these are matters that have been consulted on and the results consulted on. So we, and I say we as the licensing team, have not put these in to say that these must be in the guidance. They are for your consideration and for you and your committee to determine what action you wish to take them. In answer to the other matters, I do. If some of these items don't actually appear in the amended guidance, I will take responsibility for that, as I'm the done most of the authoring on this, and it may well be that if some of these matters are adopted by yourselves, that we will just simply put those into the guidance. But I have noted all of your comments on those, Mr. Chairman. Unless there's anything else you wish me to clarify on that.
Councillor Livington, are you happy?
Yes. Just to be clear on the wheelchair guidance, I wasn't suggesting we put it in. I was just wanted to be clear that we weren't putting it in, because I think there was a very clear result that things should be left as they are and it would evolve naturally. So I just want to make clear that I was happy with that. I just wanted to check that's what was happening. But the CCTV, obviously, I'm not happy with that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gauntlet, then Councillor Denny.
Thank you, Chair. It's a very simple contextual question. Could I just know, please, how many licensed drivers there are in the district, just to have a sense of how many responded compared with the total, please? Thank you.
Mr. Fulton, you're muted. Sorry.
Apologies, in my excitement, I've actually found the figures. I forgot to turn the microphone on. I do apologise. Paul Thornton here again. It's 138 Hackneys and 468 private hires.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, sir.
Councillor Denny.
Hi, Councillor Denis. I just a bit about process. Are we going to go through the individual points one at a time and then have a debate on each of those? Or is it just we're just going to throw in comments at this point and have a general pile in? And to be honest, I'd much rather go through them one at a time, and because then we can have a clear debate about each one.
Councillor Denny, this was discussed before the meeting. And it was kind of decided that people would rather just debate the whole thing at once. I mean, I'm more in favour of your approach, but the kind of approach was, I think, decided that we'd just kind of debate the whole thing at once and then go from there, really. So that's all right.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks for clarifying. In which case, can I continue?
Yes, of course.
I get stuck in. So obviously this is a consultation. This isn't a referendum, and it isn't it's not even advisory. It's to inform us in our decision making. So I don't think we're not obliged to go along with what most people said, regardless of whether they're members of the public or members of the trade. So on that basis, I think we should just consider it as informative at the consultation, which is really useful. And I would like to say the opposite opinion of Councillor Linnington on this. I'm completely we're not. I don't think we're always on absolute opposite sides of the same coin. But when it comes to CCTV, I think it protects our members of the public, and that is the reason for which I would be keen on us adopting a CCTV policy, with the additional benefit that it also protects our trade from false allegations. So it's an insurance which helps us protect our people, and I think that's the key reason for adopting it. Even if some people object to the idea, I think it's crucial that we have it. Thank you for that. I'll just stick with that one for the moment.
Thank you, Councillor Day. Are there any other questions from members? I've got one myself, personally. Well, I've got a few actually. I'm sorry, Paul. With regards to 3.1b, which is the age restrictions, can I ask? Obviously, we have vehicles that are moving towards more environmentally friendly vehicles, such as we've passed. Well, some guidance has been changed to allow electric vehicles now, and we're allowing hybrids. These vehicles are quite substantially more expensive than your standard car, and their efficiency ratings, I doubt, are going to change that much in respect for like air pollution and things. Would they become under exceptional circumstances? Because I think renewing an electric vehicle probably every 10 years is going to be of significant expense to the trade. And obviously, I'm sure most of us would like us make our cars to move towards that. And that's kind of government's advice, is to move away from petrol and diesel. So I'm just wondering whether we can allow some leeway for more environmentally friendly vehicles on that role, as long as obviously they're making MOTs and things like that, obviously.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, it's Paul Thornton here again. Actually, this point is not, because this is all very, very new. To be fair, this point has not been raised before in relation to certainly exceptional circumstances. Now, those that know me well, when I advise on policies, will know that my use of the phraseology exceptional circumstances, we deliberately don't give a list of exceptional circumstances, because then if you start going down a list of exceptional circumstances, then they tend not to be exceptional, in my view. It becomes almost like a standard to judge by. So the exceptional circumstances, what we advise applicants is for them to inform us. Now, in the case of electric vehicles, these would have to be judged on their merits, but I do think, in the light of your comments, that there is probably a wider discussion to be had around electric vehicles and whether they need to be subject or should be subject to the 10-year rule. I don't know. In all honesty, I don't know enough about them. But it may well be that if you and your committee are viewed to go down that road, certainly in that around the maximum age of vehicles, that may be a bit of work that could be undertaken. So I probably haven't answered your question there very well, Mr. Chairman, but
no, that's absolutely fine, Mr. Fulton. I mean, I don't want to create any more work right now. It's just an idea I'd potentially like to look at in the future. I mean, and much like you, I'm fairly new to electric vehicles as well, so I don't know their kind of shelf life and things, but I just know they're exceptionally expensive compared to your standard car. With regards to 3.1c also, obviously we've started this process now and it's moving along quite nicely. Do we have a date from which drivers, if they're not using fixed plates, will start being pulled up? Is there a kind of cut-up date yet in place from where everyone now has to remove their magnetic plates?
We haven't set a cut-off date. It would be fair to say that when we started out on the process of fixing door signs, the plan was to do 2 days a week through the months, and in the hope that we would, or in the expectation that we would probably conclude this sometime early summer. Regrettably, and with most things, once a plan is put into effect and once it touches the real world, things don't always turn out to plan. What we have had to do is to reduce the plating days from 2 to 1 because it has been a substantial demand on the time of the licensing team. But we are engaging with the operators, and I think we're engaging well. We are actually moving through the numbers quite quickly. But I wouldn't like to actually say what the completion date would be, because what I wouldn't want to do would be to tie us to something that would be at this stage probably unrealistic, certainly in the light of the what we've learned from our experiences so far. But we're getting good. We're getting a good response from the operators. We're getting a good response from the drivers who are turning up. That's probably about the best way I can answer your question, Mr. Chairman.
I appreciate that, Mr. Thornton. And Danielle, do you want to come in?
Yeah, hi, I'm Danielle Ball, Licensing Specialist Advisor. Just to clarify that point, Chair, we are hoping that all contact would have been made by the operators, which, as you can see from the numbers, cover the vast amount of vehicles, and we are hoping for all contact to be made by May, and then obviously we will be booking them in. So we would like to think that the vast majority of the fleet, the private hires mainly, would be done by the middle of the summer. But obviously there will be some element of mopping up, and also we will then need to be making contact with the independent Hackney carriage drivers who aren't associated with operators. And obviously that is a bit more time consuming because we will have to make contact with them individually rather than going through an operator and making mass contacts. It will be a one-on-one, so that will be a slightly slower process than it has been with the private hire operators. I hope that clarifies it a bit further.
Thank you, Daniel. That's great. And last one, honestly, regards to the CCTV. I mean, if we did plan to go down that road, and I'm honestly not sure how it will go, can we please look at pushing it back at least a year? Basically, I mean, looking at the text in the agenda, we're looking at £500 probably for each individual taxi driver. They've been hit exceptionally hard during COVID-19, and I think we need to give them a bit longer than in 2022 to put some pennies back in the bank and be able to afford it if we did go down that road. So I'd like to propose putting it back at least a year if we did go down that road.
Mr. Chairman, the matters in the report and the matters that went to public consultation are proposals. They are for you and your committee to determine, to decide. And would include, if you were going to implement any of these matters, in my view, you are entitled to decide upon a date, notwithstanding anything that's actually mentioned in this report.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from members? No. Okay, so what we'll start doing now, I'm kind of mindful that some of these are really kind of controversial, and people haven't fully seemed in favour of all of them. So what I might do with the more controversial ones like CCTV is take that to an individual vote, if that's okay with officers, because I think if we just sit here now and say, do we all agree with what's on the agenda, I'm not sure everybody will.
Chair, it's Michelle Wilkinson. Yeah, I think that's a good idea. We need to focus and make sure that people have agreed the particular items. Otherwise, we start losing track. Do you want, while we're on CCTV, do you want to discuss that item first?
Yep. Okay. So, I mean, do members have any comments? Any other members other than obviously Councillor Lillington's Fewdhurst? Councillor Gauntlet. Councillor Gauntlet, you're muted. Councillor Gauntlet, you're muted.
I'm getting used to a new machine. My apologies.
No worries.
just to open the debate, really, I tend towards Councillor Denise' view, but I haven't heard the other view, and I'd like to know, probably from Councillor Ling, why it isn't a good idea. I think we can then make a better decision if we have both sides of the debate. Thank you.
Chair, do you want me to speak as Councillor?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, of course you're cool.
I think there are a couple of issues. First of all, I can understand it if we were in a very high crime area and there were lots of crimes reported with either, passengers attacking taxi drivers or taxi drivers, doing inappropriate things to passengers. But I don't, well, unless the officers can tell me otherwise, I really don't think we have a high number of incidents. And to me, it's a privacy issue more than anything as well. But when I'm in a taxi, I don't want to feel like I'm being recorded. We have enough CCTV out in other places. But when you're in the car and travelling along, it should be the same as in your own car. It's a privacy issue to me. And there's no way that I want to be recorded. And just to be clear, it's not because I want to do anything naughty or illegal in a taxi, but it's just the fact that I don't want to feel as though I'm being filmed. And I think a lot of other people feel the same. But you want to relax, you want to be able to talk, if you're with somebody else, to be able to talk to them. I know there won't be audio on it, but I just feel the whole thing is, is too Big Brother. You're being watched all the time. And that to me is not conducive to a relaxing taxi ride. So that's my main issue. And the other issue to me is cost. That I think it is just very unfair to impose the cost of this on taxi drivers. But I do see that one of the consultation responses was from a company that said instead of buying them, they could rent the CCTV. So maybe that's another issue that officers could answer. That would there be a choice that the taxi, if this was to be put in, would taxi drivers have a choice of either buying a system or renting one? Because the other thing is, I can see it's going to be a whole load of hassle because we have the council being the what's the term, the data protection officer or whatever the correct term is. So that's one issue. There's a lot of work for the council. Secondly, I see there is an issue that when taxis go in for any repairs, the CCTV can accidentally be cut off. And the taxi driver may not know that it's not working, so they could be driving around for months and not realise it's not working. So I think there's a whole load of issues here that to me, it just seems an awful lot of trouble, an awful lot of expense for something that's really not necessary. So that's basically it in a nutshell.
Any other question? Anybody else? Councillor Robinson.
Thank you, Chair. I would be very much in favour of CCTV. Basically, the same as what Councillor Denise said. It's for the safety and security of both driver and passenger. But I also take Councillor Lillington's point, and we are in a low-risk area. But we have licensed in the last year, 18 months, how many Uber drivers that don't actually drive in Brighton. Sorry, don't drive in Lewis. They're registered in Lewis, but they get called over to Brighton. So I think that is maybe more of a point that we should take on board, that, that all of our licensed taxi drivers don't work in the nice area that is in Lewis, but they do get called over when need be over to Brighton. So I coming from London, I think it's a very, very good idea. I think it's we can pick holes in every single thing with regards to whether it's rented, whether they have to pay for it themselves in a big lump sum, and the council as a data protection shouldn't be an onerous task, because it only be a problem if there is a data breach. And I'm sure that the officers from the legal side will be able to tell us it's only if there's a data breach. So it's just a matter of storing. And I think it also has to be behove of the driver, if it goes in for a service, that he makes sure that it is working like he would do anything else, like he makes sure his tyres are the correct thing, he's got oil in his car, etc., etc. So I just think that has to become part of his sort of little tick box check that he has to do before he goes out. So I'd be for it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Lillington.
Thank you, Chair. I forgot to say, I should have said, could we not make it voluntary? But instead of making it mandatory, it was voluntary. If taxi drivers felt they wanted it for their own safety and they thought it was a good idea, they could do it. But if they didn't want to, they couldn't. So I don't mind it being introduced as long as it would be voluntary, not mandatory. Thank you.
I'm not sure whose hand went up first, Michelle or Danielle?
Just as a point of clarification, it is now voluntary. People can choose to have CCTV, and I think the current guidance says that we even encourage it. It's just not compulsory. So it's certainly, people can have CCTV now in the vehicles. Thank you.
Danielle?
Thank you, Chair. Danielle Ball, Licensing Specialist Advisor. Yes, I was just going to say the same point as Michelle had raised. It currently is voluntary, and it is something that we suggest that they look into if they feel that they do need it. And actually, judging by the amount of vehicle inspections we've been doing recently, the proportion of drivers who do have CCTV is higher than we first anticipated. I would guess that there's probably 15 to 20% of vehicles that currently do have the CCTV. What we have found is that drivers seem to be using what are called dash cam footages as a CCTV unit, and that is not compliant with the regulations around CCTV. So just to clarify a couple of points that Councillor Lillington raised, if CCTV were to be used in vehicles, it would have to be on a hard drive, which means that nobody is able to view that CCTV unless the request is made to the data controller. Lewis District Council, in this instance, would probably be the data controller. So that CCTV footage of a day-to-day journey in the vehicle would not be viewed by anybody. It would only be if a complaint was made against the driver, or if the driver had a complaint against the passenger, that the police or the local authority would ask to actually view that CCTV from that person's vehicle. And when it's on a hard drive, it overwrites itself, so that that footage won't be there indefinitely. That footage would be overwritten in a period of time, depending on how large the memory disk is in the CCTV. So potentially it will be overwritten within 28 days of that CCTV happening. And I just wanted to touch on another matter that was raised in regard to complaints where CCTV would be useful. Unfortunately, we are now in a world where actually it is becoming more frequent that CCTV could potentially help, rather it be against the driver or in support of the driver. And there have been a couple of instances where we have had to revoke drivers' licences under the immediate powers due to potential incidents that have taken place within a vehicle. So unfortunately, we are in a place where CCTV could be useful in a number of complaints. However, it is a decision for you as a committee to make on whether it's eligible to be used in Lewis Council in there. Thank you.
Thank you, Danielle. Joe Dunk, do you want to come in?
Hi, thank you, Chair. Senior Specialist Advisor for Environmental Health and Licensing. Just reconfirming the points that Danielle's raised. The Department of Transport guidance is, and Paul mentioned it, is being presented to all authorities for consideration. It is not based on local intelligence. It is because of the public safety risk that this sector pose to the local community with safeguarding and county line issues, and that's why it's been presented. It isn't based on the local intelligence we have, but I have to say, in my short time of managing this team, my eyes are open to the type of issues that the taxi sector raise concerns in the local community.
Thank you. Councillor Denny.
Hi, yes, Councillor Johnny Denis. Hello. Just further to some of the comments that just came back. Then I'm wondering if we'd had this regulation in over the last year, how many times do you think we would have had recourse to looking at the CCTV footage because of the sorts of complaints that we've actually had? That would be the first thing. And then, actually, does this prevent people from using dash cam, which is unregulated? And people, so some taxi drivers are using dash cams, and they're that, as I understand it, that's unregulated, and passengers are not being protected because in the same way, because that footage can be used. Which is Councillor Linton's point, is about actually how private are people's lives actually now if people are using dash cam informally and not regulated, and there is no data protection in place. Actually, is that a significant danger that we also, whether it's part of this guidance or not, we should actually have a look at in due course? Because that sounds particularly worrying, because it's not regulated monitoring of people's private lives. So those 2 points. Thanks.
Thank you, Johnny. Danielle?
Yeah, Danielle Ball, licensing specialist. Unfortunately, I don't have the amount of times that we would potentially have had course to look at CCTV to hand, but I would suggest it's probably what you count on your hand that come to mind, excuse me, that we would have been interested in looking at CCTV if it was available. And that could be whether it's for the driver or potentially a complaint against a driver to safeguard the customer or the driver. And as far as the dash cam goes, dash cam is allowed to be in the vehicle if it's outside of the car. So, for example, some of the drivers get a better rate on their insurance if they have a dash cam that shows any accidents, if it was their fault, for example. So a dash cam is allowed in a car, but as long as it's showing outside of the vehicle. They're not allowed to have it recording inside of the car, because, like you say, it is against the data protection regulations, because it's not a restricted system. It's not a system that's been approved. So when we have obviously come to note with this, and we've also taken it up with the vehicle suitability test garages to look out for this, because obviously we are advising drivers that, yes, by all means use it outside of the vehicle, but if you are recording inside the vehicle, it would need to go through an approved system. I hope that's helpful.
Really helpful. Thank you very much.
I don't know who that was. Quick. I'm not sure who it was. Councillor Borman first.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, with regards to CCTV, obviously it says in the guidance that they have to purchase it themselves, but as Councillor Linton says, renting it would make it cheaper for them. We also had feedback from a local business that leased them to drivers, but he also stated that he was the data controller and he owned the equipment. And obviously our guidance says that the taxi driver has to own it, and Lewis District is the data controller. How are we going to get around that? Because obviously that's contradictory to each other. And the other point has gone out of my head. I might come back.
No problem. Sorry, does anybody want to come in regards to Councillor Borman's comments? Michelle.
Michelle Wilkinson, solicitor. My view is if the council make it compulsory rather than voluntary, as it is currently, that we would be the data controller. In terms of buying or leasing, I don't think that makes any difference. It's because if you decide to do it, we are making it compulsory that we are the data controller.
Thank you. Councillor Robinson.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Christine Robinson. Just going on from actually Councillor Borman raised a couple of the questions that I was going to raise, but what I was going to say is that could we have a hybrid system, as in that they can purchase through the council the £500, or go with the lease, an approved company that the council are happy with regards to leasing it or renting it. I mean, will we be open to that suggestion so that the driver could then decide what's cheapest? It's a bit like buying a mobile phone, isn't it, really? Do you have a contract or do you buy one for yourself? Sort of thing. So, have we thought of that? And then obviously you could choose the right company and lay down sort of the regulations in as much that you want to be the data controller, or you have to be the data controller, the council have to be. I don't know, it's just a sort of, then the drivers have the option, whatever their outgoings are, and then they can make a decision if we make it mandatory that they have to have it done. Thank you, Chair. Sorry for wittering.
Thank you, Councillor. I did mention at the last committee meeting that when we come up for that we're discussing sending this to consultation, that I would like, and I still would like it, that there's definitely more than one provider, because a lot of complaints we get is so far, I think it's the radios or something like that, or the meters, that there's only one provider and there is no competition in terms of costs. So there's always one price, and I don't think that's particularly fair. Can I just ask as well to officers, I mean, is there a significant expense on the council becoming a data host? Thank you. On the bottom, sorry. Oh, it's Joe Dunk.
Hi, Jo Dunk, Senior Specialist Advisor, Environmental Health and Licensing. I think when it comes to the data holder side of things, it's something that sits more with the governance officer, with in the legal team. We've got to explore those options and the cost implications, I think. And obviously, you know, with any CCTV options we propose to the trade, it would be on a cost-effective basis, you know, and reviewing a number of options rather than it being distinct.
Okay, I think it's quite important to know what the cost impact on the potential on the council would be before, personally, my personal opinion is, before we would make a decision on it, because I mean, if it comes out that there's a significant expense, then would it come out of our pockets or would it come out of the council's pockets? And it's kind of who pays for what, really? Sorry, Danielle.
Danielle Ball, Licensing Specialist Advisor. Yeah, kind of just wanted to come in on what Dunk had just previously been saying. Obviously, if it was something that was passed, it would have to obviously go out to potential people that could provide that. And at the moment, we don't have all of those specific information because obviously we don't know if it was going to be passed. So there is some work to be done around costings. The costings that were found were kind of like a ballpark figure, but obviously, and as what has previously been stated, the council would have to become the data controller if it was making it mandatory, and that is why we haven't been the data controller before. It's sat with the company that has put in the equipment. So there is work to be done around being the data controller as well. So we have figures in mind, but obviously we don't have specifics in regards to the costings or if companies are in a position to lease the equipment to drivers, because that's a bit further into if we were going down that path around some work. I understand Radio Relay, who currently do the CCTV for people who choose to have that system in place, but we don't know if they would go for a tender if it went out for the whole of the trade. So I can understand your sentiments in that it would be good to have more of this information, but we haven't engaged with the specific companies because we don't know if they would go for the tender process either. Paul, you've got some figures. Do you know where they come from? I wasn't privy to that, sorry.
Mr. Chairman, Paul Thornton, Specialist Advisor Licensing. This was a ballpark figure, and without wishing to advertise, other providers are available. This came from Radio Relay at New Haven, and they say it was to endorse Danielle's comments there. This is purely a ballpark figure because we didn't want to be seen to be jumping the gun on any decision that your committee would make, Mr. Chairman. in relation to this, and hence we haven't produced detailed documents. And in relation to the, if I can just add a comment, and probably Michelle will back me up on this, in relation to the being the data controller, this is something which is I probably want to say probably unknown territory for most local authorities, because I haven't been able to find anybody that actually is a data controller as a local authority, because this subject is very, very new. CCTV in taxis, there are one or two, notably one, but I do know of another one, matters going through the Supreme Court at the moment in relation to CCTV in taxis. They do relate to audio, but we are waiting, and we've got no definitive on those at the moment. But so this is all relatively new territory for us as officers, and certainly for local authorities as data controllers. But the Information Commissioner's Office are engaged with this, and I think as time moves on, more clarity will appear.
Thank you. My concern still is, though, on who in the council, what department, for example, because obviously licensing, the money's ring fenced. And would it come out of that coffers to become the data host and the expenses from that, or will it come out the main council's coffers? Because who's the data host? Is it the licensing department or is it the council? Because I think that if it's coming out the full council's pocket, then it raises other questions about should other people be involved in this decision.
Mr. Chairman, in the absence of looks like my line manager might be rescuing me, Mr. Chairman. Can I defer to Joe Dunk?
Of course.
Hi, Chair. Joe Dunk, Senior Specialist Advisor, Environmental Health and Licensing. My understanding is this would be something that would sit in another department within the council because of the legal implications of the data you're handling. But on another point, we are in control of that information as well. So you've got to look at the point of view from a legalities perspective. It would sit within the authority in managing that. It wouldn't be within the licensing team.
Thank you. Councillor Robinson.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Christine Robinson. Hearing the officers sort of saying we're going into uncharted territory, so to speak, I think I have to agree with you, Chair, that if we do decide on the CCTV October 2022 as maybe a little bit premature from the council point of view, as well as informing the licence holders, we need to have all our ducks in a row and all the costings before we can even, I think, put this out a little bit further. So I think your proposal 2023 gives everybody a lot more chance to make sure everything's, covered. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Are there any more comments from any members? Okay, I'm going to go to a vote on this one because I really don't know how it's going to go. I mean, should we go on the original? I mean, let's go on the original one. Or sorry, Michelle, I might need your help here. Would it be the amendment to go back to 2023, or what's on the paper? Then do the amendment, and then. Sorry.
Michelle Wilkinson, solicitor. My view would that we should just vote on whether to make it compulsory or not in the first instance, and then in the second instance, go, if it's agreed, go with the date.
Okay, cool.
Because if members aren't agreeing in the first place,
yeah,
please bother with the date.
Okay, Councillor Borman.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Can we also agree whether that it's can be leased and not just purchased as well, please?
They're on that. They're too expensive.
Yes, it's your no problem, Councillor Borman. If that's possible to implement, then yeah. Councillor Lord. Councillor Lord, you're muted.
Okay, I think we've done the CCTV to death. There's two things which we've not mentioned. First of all is insurance, because I know for a fact if taxi drivers have the CCTV, it affects their insurance. It makes it easier for them to insurance, and also with regards to claims. So if there's a claim regarding non-payment of fees regarding people doing a runner, etc., they've got something there to substantiate their claim. And if we go down the route of leasing and versus purchasing, we have a situation whereby if the council get involved with the leasing, what happens with sets that are returned to the council and they're obsolete? So the next person who comes to lease a set off the council, they are basically not fit for purpose. To me, if a taxi driver wants his business to be a success, it's in his interest to have a CCTV fitted in his taxi. It's as simple as that. Thank you.
Okay, let's go to a vote then on implementing CCTV in taxis first. And I'll start with the roll call. So I'll go with Councillor Borman. For or against?
For.
Councillor Clay. Councillor Clay? Councillor Clay, are you still here? Okay, we'll go on to Councillor Denny and come back to Councillor Clay later.
For.
Councillor Gauntlet.
For.
Councillor Lillington.
Against.
Councillor Lord.
For.
Councillor Robinson. Sorry, Councillor Robinson, you're muted.
Sorry, Chair. For.
Okay. Well, that's quite overwhelmingly in favour of for. Councillor Clay, are you still here? Okay. Officers, Councillor Norman. Sorry, Jennifer Norman. Could you look into that for me?
Thank you, Chair. Jennifer Norman, Democratic Services. If Councillor Clay, if you can hear me, I believe to unmute yourself while speaking on the phone, if you press *6, that should unmute your microphone, and that's *6.
Okay, I mean, it would have passed without Councillor Clay's involvement anyway.
Unfortunately, we're unable to mute anyone who is ringing in by phone. So in order for Councillor Clay to speak, he would need to press *6.
Okay, and then if we go now on the vote of a date, either 2022 or 23, I'm proposing 23, just to give the trade a bit more time. So if we do a roll call again, and again go with Councillor Borman. For or against 2023?
For.
Councillor Clay? Oh, sorry, Councillor Denny, because I don't think we can get Councillor Clay.
Against.
Okay. Councillor Gauntlet?
For.
Councillor Robinson?
For.
Councillor Lord?
For.
And Councillor Lington, I missed you out, I'm sorry.
For.
Okay. And did I go to Councillor Robinson?
Yes, you did, and I said
okay.
For.
Okay, sorry. Okay, so 2023 will be the date then. Okay, cool. What I might do then is, if I focus on the ones that we went to consultation on, because they seem to be the more controversial ones than everything else.
Chair, may I interrupt you just a moment? I thought this is Councillor Johnny Denny, I thought you were going to discuss the ownership of the, because at the moment
sorry,
yes,
sorry.
Advice, and we're just trying to say that actually that's not, the ownership isn't important as long as it's an agreed system, so regardless of how it's acquired. So can I propose that we do that? Yeah.
So can you say that again? Sorry, Councillor Denny. I was kind of.
I was just trying to come up with a form of words that would allow us to not concentrate on ownership of the CCTV, but on just acquiring it. so that we we just changed the words to that they have to buy. Because I think we say at the moment we have to buy it, but they have to buy it. But that's not important about who owns it, is it? As long as they have the system and we're the data controller, that's what matters. So that's all I'm trying to get a proposal.
As long as it meets a certain specification, I guess, what the council. Sorry, Michelle, do you want to come in there?
Yeah, Michelle Wilkinson, solicitor. I think the wording says the system installed by October 2023. It doesn't mention how it's owned.
Oh, fine. And leave it.
But we can look into that point. We take the members' view that the ownership is not important. That's the important thing, isn't it?
Fab. If we go on to if we go on to the WAS one, because I think that's the second one on the consultation, and I think the overwhelming response to that one was keep it as it is, but I'm happy to open it up to a bigger debate. But I think almost 80% I think come back saying keep it as it was. So any comments or keep it as it was? Councillor Borman.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Councillor Liz Borman. Obviously, it was overwhelmingly to leave it as it is, but there was quite a few comments to actually ask for operators to be able to have a quota. So whether it's the operator has to have 25% of their vehicles as WAVs, rather than specifying every individual driver. I wonder whether that's something that we can put in to cover. So there is enough in the district, but it's not specifically every driver. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Borman. Ed Hill did touch on that last time, didn't he? I can't remember. I'm not sure Ed's here about where we possibly couldn't do that, or there was something. It was discussed at the last committee meeting. But I'm happy to Danielle or Michelle. Danielle.
Hi, Chair. Danielle Ball, Licensing Specialist Advisor. The discussion on this is around Hackney carriage, wheelchair accessible vehicles. Hackney carriages do not need to work for an operator. It's purely around Hackney carriages rather than private hires. So the operators are private hire operators. So a potential condition on an operator licence would need to be dealt with under something different, as it would be a private hire. This is specifically around Hackney carriages. Just wanted to clarify that, Chair, at that point for you, Chair.
Could we possibly bring that back for another meeting then, to have a look at the possibility of doing it for operators? If possible.
Michelle, are you?
Well, I'm waiting. Michelle Wilkinson, solicitor. We're only looking. I think Danielle's point is that we're only looking at wheelchair accessible Hackney vehicles. In which case, private hire operators is a fairly moot point, really, as they employ private hire drivers, and we're talking about Hackneys.
Yeah, so and that's why I'm asking.
I don't understand the point of coming back again, because that would still be the case.
Not if we ask private hire operator, a different question, surely. I mean, if we were asking around private hires operators, because they do that in other areas, don't they? Where the operator has to have a specific amount of WAF vehicles.
Not that I'm aware, Chair.
I thought they did in Brighton.
Not that I'm aware. We're talking about Hackney vehicles and wheelchair accessible.
Okay, well. Okay. Councillor Robinson.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just the amount of actual taxi drivers that respond is only 28% of the whole total of the trade. So it's not, all right, yes, it's a bit of a little bit of the flavour, but I actually think, personally, I think Hackney carriages, they should be, I mean, if you come out of a station and you say you're in a wheelchair, and if we don't sort of impose some type of amount of WAVs there should be, you could be stuck there in a wheelchair waiting for a taxi to turn up. So surely, as decent human beings, we should try and, you know, encourage more WAVs. That's just in my opinion, because I think if you maintain the current guidance, well, I mean, do we know how many registered WAVs or how many WAVs we do have? Could one of the officers tell us, please?
Does an officer know?
Mr. Chairman, is it okay for me to jump in? Paul Thornton?
Yeah.
Yeah, apologies. From the report in December, there's out of the 138 hackneys, there's 5 WAVs.
Ooh. I think I'll rest my point. That's not really good enough, is it? To be frank. So if you maintain the current guidance, nothing will change. Sorry. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Denning.
Yeah, so the options were you know, leave alone, allow existing ones not to only new applicants to do WAVs or everybody on renewal, and with the aspiration there appeared to be transform the whole fleet into WAVs over time. You know, at some point, and we don't need a whole fleet of WAVs. That isn't necessary for our community. We do need an adequate supply, but none of the options presented actually addressed that. And you know, and wheelchair accessible, it doesn't mean it's accessible for everybody else. And so there are people that have access issues for whom, you know, the nature of a WAV vehicle is not suitable for their needs. So actually, it's kind of we've asked the wrong question somehow, but I'm not sure how to get to getting a better provision without taking over the whole, you know, without changing the whole fleet, because that isn't necessary. But we do need to have more WAV vehicles available. We do not want to see people you know, stuck at stations, as just been suggested by Councillor Robinson. But I can't see. Has somebody got a suggestion about how we can improve the increase beyond 5, which is really poor, to increase the accessible vehicles, without having any, you know, without needing to go to the whole fleet ultimately, which is what all proposals were about. So I'm open to suggestions, but really think we need to address that and increase the numbers of accessible vehicles.
Councillor Gauntlet.
Well, I was going to come in on that, really. Thank you, Chair. Just say that I can't really see how you can do it without some sort of incentive. Doesn't have to be financial necessarily, but some way. I'm with Councillor Robinson entirely, but I don't know how you could actually set it out if all these individual owners are what they are. How can you make you could appeal to their humanity, but I'm not quite sure what else it is. So it feels to me like there's more work to be done on that one.
Councillor Lord.
Yes, thank you, Chair. It's only we were talking before about forcing taxi drivers to pay £500 for a CCTV, and yet to have a Hackney carriage capable of carrying a person of needs, special needs, could be anything from being partially sighted to being a wheelchair, etc., will cost far more than £500. So I think to impose numbers and say half of them have to be accessible by people with special needs, it seems a little bit harsh when we were debating for £500, give them extra two years to do it. So I think it's also basically supply and demand, because if everyone was for special needs, not everybody's a special need person, although there's a definite need for these particular types of vehicles.
Thank you, Councillor Lord. I don't know if it's feasible. I mean, could we not impose, once we reach a certain number of hackneys in the fleet, that from that point on every single new hackney has to be a wheelchair accessible vehicle? So if we get to 200, say, or 150 or 160, from then on every single new taxi has to have then be wheelchair accessible. Sorry, Councillor Lord.
Yeah, but then we said, well, okay, let's impose the fact that every single new taxi has got to be a battery-powered one. We can't start imposing demands on people who are basically self-employed and trying to make the best of a living. Well, let's face it, they've had such a hard time. So I just say, let the market sort itself out. It will sort itself out with regards to battery cars, it will sort itself out with regards to CCTV, although we're imposing it, and eventually it will sort itself out with regards to people who need special need taxis. Because I know for a fact a taxi is quite expensive, even with access, special needs access. They're not cheap, and everybody knows that. I think it'd be very, very unfair of us as a council to impose that. I think we should just let the market let it go its course. Thank you.
Well, we've got 3 options on the table, and sorry, Councillor Denny.
Councillor Denis, I just wondered actually. So rather than stipulate the numbers, as been tentatively proposed in the consultation, that we can we ask whether we're allowed to incentivise people, drivers, to become WAV drivers in some other means by financial assistance or some cost related. Is there anything that we can do as a licensing authority which would allow us or permit us to incentivise? So, question for officers, I think there.
Can an officer come in?
Danielle Ball, Licensing Specialist Advisor. I think that it's something that would potentially need to be looked at because, as we're aware, taxi licensing is a ring-fence budget and it takes a certain amount of money to process an application. And that same amount of money would be whether it be for a wheelchair accessible vehicle or for a standard vehicle. So we need to ensure that obviously the money side of it, if there was a financial incentive, is something that is taken account of. So I don't think that we can give an answer to that question here and now, I'm afraid, unless Michelle, from a legal perspective, has a different view on that.
Thank you, Michelle.
No, I agree with Michelle Wilkinson, solicitor. I agree with Danielle that if members are not content with those options on the table and want officers to go away and have a rethink about increasing the numbers but not doing any of those options, then I think that would need a bit more consideration. I think there would certainly be an issue about using the licensing fees to subsidise certain drivers. But it may be that there's other things that we can do. I think it would be unwise for any officer to suggest things to you now. I think we need to do a bit of research and think about those things. So if the members decided that they take Councillor Robinson's point that 5 is not a big number, but they don't want to insist that all new or new and replacement vehicles are, then I think the wisest course would be to ask your officers to come up with some other solutions to it. But I don't think it'd be wise to just randomly pick, say now.
Okay, so shall we propose that officers go away and have another look and come back with some other options that don't include taking the whole fleet? Would everyone be happy with that?
Yeah.
Yep, cool. Okay then. If we go on to, sorry, I'm just going through the consultation. So if we go on to the penalty point scheme, and any questions regarding that? I mean, that was a fairly mixed response. So, or would people be happy to go with it? Consensus is to go with it. Cool. Yep. The safeguarding and disability awareness training. Obviously, the overwhelming response was either strongly agree or agree. So I've got one question on that, and I've got one big concern. As someone that is a qualified child football coach, every 3 years I have to renew my safeguarding because legislations and rules change. It's sounding very much like the safeguarding is a one-off, and I'm worried because obviously things change quite significantly when it comes to safeguarding, and and stuff. So, I mean, if there was a massive change in safeguarding rules, would we then go back to the trainer and say, actually, no, you need to come back and do a refresher? So, sorry, Paul Thornton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Paul Thornton, Specialist Advisor. Mr. Chairman, the issue with this, and I take your point, the drivers will be subject to a DBS every 6 months. And in relation to the safeguarding, I think if anything startlingly new came out, I think that's something we could look at. And it's probably just, if I can just take a couple of minutes just to explain the ethos of the safeguarding training. It's to actually to inform the trade of behaviours and things to look out for, so that, for example, you know, if a driver is picking a young man, a young woman up at 9, 10 o'clock at night, dropping them at an address and then picking them up again at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, and somebody at that address is actually coming out and paying their fare for them both ways, male or female, whatever. That's the type of thing, and it's quite a generalised example, but it's probably the best I can come up with, but that's the type of thing which the safeguarding training is saying to a driver, actually, you're in a great position here because you are transporting people over, you know, the district. You're transporting all sorts of people from your community. You're in a unique position, eyes and ears. And so what the authorities want to try and give these, you know, the drivers is just a bit more of an insight into actually, and I'm not saying that nobody knows what's going on, far from it, but it's just to say, actually, if you think this is strange, there are places that you can signpost this information, you know, for others in authority, police, social services, etc., to consider taking action on. So that's the type of thing. It's almost like behavioural matters. And certainly I have experience, and I know that there is this authority has run previous safeguarding, which was on a voluntary basis, run by Bernardo's, very and a very good and very efficient. It was only a couple of hours training, but you know, there was a bit of scepticism, it would be fair to say, amongst the trade, or why do we need to do this? But to a man and to a woman, certainly my experience, and I know that Danny's experience when they did it here, was that they were coming out saying, oh, actually, that was really useful. And it was just picking up little bits like that example. So sorry if I've gone on a bit there, Mr. Chairman, but that's the type of thing. So I think in answer to your question, would it be worth refreshing it after 3 years? I think if something startlingly new was coming through, I think that's something that we could probably consider, but I'm not sure at this stage whether we would need to make it you know, renewable every 3 years, because bearing in mind that you know, apart from anything else, that certainly for the conduct of the drivers, there is a DBS every 6 months, but this is not about the conduct of the drivers as safeguarding training. It's about actually what they're looking at and what they're hearing and seeing.
Okay, thank you, Paul. I mean, any other questions regarding that? Oh, Councillor Borman and Councillor Robinson. So Councillor Borman first.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Liz Borman. I was just wondering, because obviously this is £25 for each course, that's £50, and this is going to start adding up, lots of increases that taxi drivers have got to pay out for. I'm just wondering, we do have this ring fence pot of money which is meant to benefit the trade, whether that we could say pay for current drivers 50% of their fees, so they'd only have £12.50 for each course to pay rather than the full £25 each. And whether some of that money could be used for current drivers. Any new applications would have to pay the full cost. I just wonder whether that is something we could do. Thank you, Chair.
Could officers come back on that? I quite like that idea.
Mr. Chairman, Paul Thornton here again. As I've still got my camera on, I'll answer. I think that will probably be a matter for those above me to determine the levels of funds available. So regrettably, I don't think I can actually answer that, but there may be others on this call, and I see Jo Dunk has her hand raised, Mr. Chairman.
Hi, Jo.
Hi, Chair. Jo Dunk, Senior Specialist Advisor, Environmental Health and Licensing. I think we're currently looking into our fees and the surplus that we have. It's a point for consideration. We can look into it and see whether or not it's a possibility or not, and feed back to the Chair appropriately, if that's okay.
Okay. Councillor Bowman, are you content or?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yeah, no, I'm happy with that. I'd be appreciative to look into, and if Councillor MacLeod, you could let us know what the decision of that is as well, please.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you.
Councillor Robinson.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Councillor Robinson. A question for you, Paul. With regards to the safeguarding, and I noticed when you read on page 24 of the document, there's also talking about county lines. Presumably, do the police get in contact if they feel that there's something? Do they get in contact with us, or do they get in contact with the operators and the private licence holders, and the taxi drivers themselves? So maybe that there's something that they need to look out for. Something's happening in Hastings and it's coming this way, or that sort of thing. Is there communication, I suppose, between different authorities? Same as social workers as well. Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Councillor Robinson, Paul Thornton here. We have a very good relationship with Sussex Police, and Sussex Police have recently appointed a taxi liaison officer. We meet with, and the flow of information is good, and it's regular. So there are a number of issues which are discussed. So to put your mind at ease on that.
Thank you.
Sorry, Jo, are you planning? Do you want to come back in? Oh, no.
Yes, sorry,
Yeah,
Chair.
okay.
Jo Dunk. Just to reconfirm, Councillor Robinson, in accordance with the guidance from the Department of Transport, we have established regular communications in a formal setting in a meeting of sharing information in accordance with what the guidance says, and that is ongoing with East Sussex County Council, because obviously for school runs and vulnerable people within the community, and also with the police, and it's about bringing those agencies together and taking a multi-agency approach. Those foundations have been laid already by Paul and Danny, as is.
So if I go to a vote now on this one, and I'm assuming most people are happy to implement this, and then obviously providing the feedback to councillors regarding the reduction in fees. Yeah. Okay, cool. And then so we're on the English proficiency test now, which was quite overwhelmingly in favour of. Does anyone have any concerns regarding that, or happy to go forward? Yeah. Okay, and then the last one in the consultation, I believe, was the convictions guidance. And were people happy with what was written in regards to the convictions guidance? Yeah. Okay. Cool. So I'm not going to go through every other point up to double F. So I mean the other stuff, unless anybody has any concerns regarding anything else on the agenda, we'd go to a vote on the whole guidance now. So does anyone else have any other concerns on what's on the agenda? No. Okay. So if we go to a formal vote, and which would be the main changes are that we would implement the CCTV, but from 2023 and not 2022. And I'm not sure if there was any other significant changes, and correct me if I'm wrong, Michelle. Sorry, Michelle.
course, it depends on the meaning of significant. No, I think that's the CCTV was agreed. Wheelchair accessible vehicles, your officers will come back with a subsequent report. The penalty scheme was agreed. The disability safeguarding training was agreed. Subtext look at the cost. And the English test was agreed, and the convictions part was agreed. So, and there was nothing, there were other matters, obviously, but nothing significant that the members wished to discuss. So I think those were the overall view of it. Okay, cool. So if we go for a vote on all that then. Sorry, Jen, did you, or Michelle, do you want to read out what we're actually voting on, or shall we just, or do we all know what we're voting on? Sorry. Through you, Chair. You're just voting on the officers' recommendations. Yeah, cool. On page 11. Well, perhaps not one, because you've considered the consultation responses received. Yeah. Okay. If we go to a vote then on the changes considered in the public consultation, and oh, sorry, Jen, I didn't see your hand.
No, that's okay. Thank you, Jennifer Norman, Democratic Services. I was just going to echo what Michelle had said. And regarding the officer recommendations, I think we should go through each one of them separately, but I'll defer. Sorry, Michelle, you muted yourself before you stopped speaking. That was Jennifer. Sorry, Jen, not sure how that happened, but I was just going to say I would suggest that we take each of the recommendations one at a time, unless Michelle has. Have we lost Jen? Hey, Michelle. Do we need to wait for? I'm assuming we need to wait for Jen to come back. Any legal advice? I'll defer to her. Oh, she's back. She's back. No, I think we can just go through the recommendations. Okay. So the recommendations were the. Sorry, I'm trying to figure out where they are on the list now. I think we started. Yeah, I think we started with F, didn't we? Where was the main page 11? Page 11, just the officer recommendations. Just no. Okay, sorry, got you. Yeah. So I believe we're going to approve basically everything, but with one, not everything. Sorry, we're not going to approve the WAF vehicles until a further report can come back. Yep. The CCTV we're approving, but with the from 2023, not 2022, and anything else? I think that was it, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Okay. So can we go to a vote on that then? Okay. If I start in a roll call from Councillor Borman. 4. Councillor Clay.
4.
Councillor Denny.
4.
Councillor Gauntlet.
4.
Councillor Lingleton.
4, but I'd like it recorded that I wanted the CCTV to be voluntary, not mandatory. And I think, Chair, we're supposed to be doing the recommendations on page 11, not just the guidance. So I assume you're doing recommendation 2 then.
Yes, sorry. Yes, sorry, recommendation 2 at the moment. I'll check. Councillor Lord.
4.
And Councillor Robinson.
4.
Okay, and then and policy and officer recommendation 3. Would everyone be happy with that? Again, we start with Councillor Borman.
4.
Councillor Clay.
4.
Councillor Denny.
4.
Councillor Gauntlet.
4.
Councillor Lidington.
4.
Councillor Lord.
4.
And Councillor Robinson.
4.
Right, thank you. So that's all kind of passed, and so the date of the next meeting of the licensing committee is scheduled to take place on the 24th of June 2021. So thank you for your time.